There is a voice inside you that has been speaking since before you knew how to name it. Not the voice that reminds you of appointments or recites your grocery list. A different one, older. The one that watches you walk into a room and begins its quiet assessment before you've even said hello. You know this voice. You've heard it in the pause between doing something and deciding whether it was good enough. It arrives without invitation. It leaves without apology. And most people spend their entire lives either obeying it or trying to silence it, never once stopping to ask where it actually came from. I've been watching you carry this voice for a very long time, across centuries, across languages, across every culture that ever built a fire and gathered around it. The shape of the voice changes, but the function stays the same. It measures, it compares, it decides whether you belong, and it does this with such routine confidence that most people assume it must be right. This voice is not your enemy, but it is not entirely your friend either. It is something older than friendship. It is a mechanism, one that was built for a world that no longer quite exists. Long before comfort was possible, before any of this softness humans now inhabit, the social group was the only barrier between a person and death. Being judged by others meant something final. Exclusion could end you, and so the mind, being remarkably adaptive, built an internal judge, a preemptive one, so that you could catch your own failures before the group did. The voice in your head that judges you is, at its origin, a survival tool, a shadow dressed in the language of criticism. The problem is that tools designed for one era rarely retire gracefully when the era ends. So now you sit in ordinary moments reaching for a glass of water or speaking a sentence that lands awkwardly in conversation, and the voice arrives as though the stakes are still absolute, as though something essential depends on whether you said the right thing, laughed at the right moment, were impressive enough, small enough, present enough. The urgency it speaks with does not match the circumstances. That mismatch is worth paying attention to. What the voice judges you for often reveals far more about your history than your present situation. It speaks in the accent of whoever first taught you what acceptable looked like. Parents carry it forward without meaning to. Teachers shape it. Early friendships etch it deeper. Somewhere along the way, you absorbed a set of criteria, and the voice now holds them like scripture. This is why two people can do the identical thing and experience completely different internal verdicts. The voice is not objective. It was never designed to be. It was designed to mirror the values of the world that formed you. That world is in the past. The mirror remained. People often try to fight the voice through argument. They construct counter-evidence. They list their achievements. They remind themselves of kind things others have said, and sometimes this brings temporary relief. But the voice does not respond to debate the way logic would suggest. You cannot win a case against something that isn't truly reasoning. The voice operates on pattern and reflex, not on evidence and conclusion. Arguing with it gives it attention. Attention gives it energy. This is why the internal struggle can feel endless, because the struggle itself is part of how the voice sustains itself. What actually begins to shift things is something quieter. It is the practice of noticing without immediately reacting, not transcendence, not some achieved state of permanent inner calm, simply the gap, however brief, between the voice speaking and you believing it entirely. That gap is where something useful can happen, not the elimination of judgment, but the loosening of its grip, because the voice does not stop when you become more aware of it. It adjusts, it grows more subtle, it disguises itself as reason, as humility, as responsible self-assessment. It tells you it is only trying to help you improve, and sometimes it actually is. Discernment is real, reflection is valuable. Not every critical thought that arises is an act of self-harm. The question worth asking is whether the voice is guiding you towards something or simply repeating itself long after the lesson was learned. Repetition without purpose is where the voice becomes most wearing. The same observation circling for the 100th time, the same old verdict delivered again across a decade. There is a particular exhaustion that comes from being tried in the same court repeatedly for a crime you may have already outgrown or perhaps never fully committed. The voice that judges you is also the voice that cares about you. They share the same root. The harshness is often the inverse of how much something mattered. People rarely judge themselves severely in domains where they feel nothing. The volume of self-criticism tends to follow the shape of what you love, what you want to protect, what you hope to be seen as. The harshest verdicts often arrive in the places of deepest longing. That is not a coincidence worth dismissing. Understanding the origin of the voice does not silence it. Understanding the mechanics of a storm does not keep you dry, but it changes your relationship with it. You stop being entirely subject to something you begin to comprehend, and in that comprehension, something loosens, not immediately, not dramatically. Over time, the way stone gradually changes shape when water moves across it long enough. The voice in your head that judges you is part of being human. What shifts is not whether it speaks, but whether it is the only thing you listen to. There are other voices in there, quieter ones, less urgent, less insistent. They tend to speak when the louder voices pause. They do not announce themselves. They do not demand attention. But they persist. They are patient in the way that things with deep roots tend to be patient. You have been listening to the judging voice for a long time. That is understandable. It was the loudest thing in the room. But rooms change, and sometimes, when you stop trying so hard to silence what is loud, you begin to hear what has always been underneath it. Something steadier, something that has been watching you try and failing and trying again without delivering a verdict. Just watching, just staying, just waiting for you to notice it was always there. That voice has nothing to prove. It does not need to be right. It simply continues beneath the noise, beneath the judgment, beneath everything you've ever feared about yourself. It continues the way the ground continues beneath everything built on top of it, present before the structure arrived, present when it finally settles.